Glorious is relentless right now. They are disrupting on so many fronts that it's getting a bit hard to follow. So I guess it shouldn't be a surprise that the team at Glorious have also placed their focus on the wireless mic segment as well. This is the brand new Moto O Wireless, and it's about to make the competition sweat. Honestly, I don't even know how the team at Glorious even have time to sleep with all the products that they're pushing out. They've got the Glorious Pandas, the Glorious Element mouse pads that are actually 3 different products, the GMMK Pro, which I don't think anyone was even expecting, and of course this, the Moto O Wireless. For you guys to understand why I'm so excited for this mouse, I need to give you guys more context. Since around the end of 2018, the Logitech G Pro Wireless mouse was my daily driver, and an expensive one at that, coming in at essentially $150. Would you believe that 2 years later, the G Pro Wireless is still selling for the same price? Since then, I've gone through 2 of them, both of which have the same double-click issue, with this one being my third. It was like having a project car that was always in the shop. So at the end of 2019, the G Pro Wireless was retired to laptop duties, and I decided to buy a brand new daily, and that ended up being the original Moto O with the glorious bungee cord holder. It's now a year later, and no other wireless mouse has really caught my eye until now. The Moto O Wireless comes in at $79.99 and competes in spec with mice like the Razer Viper Ultimate and the G Pro Wireless, both of which sit at much higher price point of $150. The fact that the G Pro Wireless has retained this price for 2 years shows that there's been a lack of clear competitive threat and was primed for disruption. On the surface, the Moto O Wireless mouse looks just like its predecessor, but if we look deeper, not only has there been changes to the hardware, but the software as well. We'll talk about this later, but the software gives you a glimpse into the future of where Glorious is heading, with the Moto O Wireless being a very important first step, so let's see what it has to offer. The packaging falls in line with the Glorious design language you've come to expect. Inside the box, you have the brand new Moto O Wireless in the same familiar shape. Underneath this, we see the wireless receiver and a USB-C and USB-A adapter. This is included so you can keep your charging cable and receiver as close to the mouse as possible to get the best performance. And finally, we have the extended cable. This is not only used to charge the mouse, but it also allows the mouse to work in a wired configuration with the transition between wired and wireless mode working automatically. The cable still has the same shoelace type material and even has this little hex pattern on top to let you know which side is up. The Moto O Wireless for the most part looks and feels identical to the wired version. This means that it has the same fantastic shape and hex cutout design that I'm a big fan of, and the buttons and scroll wheels retain the same layout. It's also kept the 3-zone RGB lighting system, which by the way has drastically different effects depending on the mouse color that you pick. If you want something more subdued, black is what you want. But if you want to have your lighting setup accentuated to match your setup, the white model is the way to go. The G-Scape PTF eFeet are also here and can be easily swapped for the ceramic G-Floats if speed is your thing. So for the most part, if you've seen, felt, or own a regular Moto O, you'll feel right at home with this mouse the moment you pick it up. But this also means that some features people have been requesting, like a more ambidextrous design with the ability to swap the side buttons similar to the G Pro Wireless, didn't make the cut. But really, you can't fault them for playing it safe on their first wireless mouse, since doing that does increase the complexity and increase the weight, which is a key feature of the mouse. While there are a ton of similarities, there have been a few changes as well. This time around, the Moto O Wireless comes in 2 different colors instead of 4. At launch, only the matte white and black will be available, with the glossy options under consideration for possible release at a later time. The matte texture feels great to the touch, but you know how it goes. They all end up smooth and glossy at some point. At the top, we see a USB-C connector that can be used to either charge the mouse or use it in a wired configuration. This connector is key, so make sure that the hex logo is pointing up. Under the mouse on the right side of the sensor, we also have a new power switch. While it looks the same on the outside, there have been tweaks under the hood as well to accommodate the new wireless functionality. If you liked how the original Model O's clicks felt, like I do, you'll be happy to hear that Glorious has chosen to stick with the same Omron D2FCF7N switches for your left and right clicks, and is still using the green Hawanos for the mouse wheel click, DPI selector, and side buttons. But it looks like the DPI selector and side button switches have been moved from being mounted to the base PCB to a new one that also acts as a battery mount, with the side buttons going from a vertical configuration to a horizontally stacked one. Mechanically different, but functionality wise they feel pretty much the same. The scroll wheel encoder on the other hand looks to be different. Instead of the brown core F switch found on the OG Model O and Model O-, we see a green core. Still seeing very minimal side-to-side wobble, and now I'm not sure it's because my older Model O's are worn out, but the scroll wheel gates on the wireless model seem more distinct and engaging. The next few changes are big ones. Starting with the sensor, we have the brand new Glorious and Pixart sensor collaboration called BAMP. It has a polling rate of 1000 Hz and can be adjusted in 4 different increments. It has a tracking speed of 400 inches per second, which if you think about it, is kind of wild. That comes out to about 23 miles per hour or 37 kilometers per hour. There's your fun fact for the day. The sensor also maxes out at 9000 DPI, which is also kind of nutty considering I play between 400 and 800 for FPS games. Now usually the sensor model is clearly printed on the sensor, but in this case all we see is this. But the rumor is that this is a vendor specific 3370, which seems credible since the specs match up. Providing the wireless capability is this multi-protocol N52840, which is pretty common, but I haven't seen this particular DO variant before, but Glorious claims that in its internal testing, latency is about 2 milliseconds. Unfortunately, I don't have a precise way to measure this, but reaction tests are consistent between the Model O and Model O Wireless. I also went into Warzone and switched between the two mice while running an AX50, and my performance on wireless was spot on. Snaps were quick and precise, while tracking was smooth and predictable, making lining up longer range snipes repeatable. My performance between the wired and wireless Model O was, as far as I can tell, identical. Powering the Model O Wireless is a 450 mAh battery that is rated for 71 hours. The battery and connector looks generic enough that replacing this in the future should be pretty easy. I'm gonna be upfront and say that verifying the advertised 71 hours is pretty much impossible without a rig, since this mouse has sleep functionality. In my experience, and take this with a grain of salt since of course usage habits varies from person to person, but for me, I spend on an average of about 12 to 13 hours at the computer, split between work, school, YouTube content creation, and games. You gotta have games, right? And the mouse easily lasted me the week before the mouse started to blink red. When that happens, connect the USB-C cable to charge the mouse. And as you charge, you'll see different colors that correspond to different charge levels. So you would think that these changes would significantly change the weight of the mouse, but you'd be surprised because I was. Using my kind of janky kitchen scale, I measured the original Model O using the Glorious bungee at 68 grams, while the new Model O Wireless at 70 grams, and the same Model O Wireless using the included extended cable and bungee clocked in at 74 grams. Now there's some voodoo going on here because you would expect that the addition of a battery pack and PCB would equate to more than the 2 gram difference. Even at its heaviest with the cable at 74 grams, it is still lighter than the G Pro's 80 grams. One thing I do want to note is that I have a feeling that very sensitive players will notice the 2 gram difference, especially players using really low sensitivity. Now I'm not sure if it's the 2 grams specifically or how it's distributed within this mouse, but when I was in Warzone switching back and forth between the OG Model O and the Model O Wireless, I felt that with quick 180 whips, the Wireless O required a bit more grip to keep firmly planted in my hands. On the flip side, what you get is the freedom to snap and whip however you want without having to worry about tugging on the bungee or having too much cable slack on your desk getting in the way to accommodate that wide motion. To make adjustments to the mouse, you have 2 options, either the embedded hotkeys on the mouse itself or through the new Glorious Core software. Let's start with the embedded option first. You can of course easily switch between your DPI settings with the DPI button and track the 4 default value changes at the bottom. To adjust the lighting effects, the hotkey to initiate the change is to hold down the DPI button and mouse wheel click, then tap either the forward button to change the lighting effects, back to adjust the speed, left click to switch the color in certain modes, and right click to adjust the brightness. It's nice to have in a pinch, but you really want to make these changes in the new Glorious Core software. The Glorious Core software, in my opinion, is just as important, maybe even more so than this mouse. Previously, if you own a GMMK keyboard, for example, you need specific software to go with a specific revision of the keyboard. And if you own the Model O or the Model D mouse, those needed their own specific software as well. So if you happen to own all three of those products, you end up with 3 different software packages installed. That is obviously not a good user experience, especially when you have a rapidly growing portfolio of products. So it makes sense that Glorious would want to unify the experience in order to further elevate the user experience. Keep in mind that the software version I have is pre-production, so it's still rough around the edges, but as you can see, it is definitely a step in the right direction. Compared to the old Model O software, which was really busy, this new UI is well laid out and intuitive. On the main screen, you'll find a graphic of the device that you have attached, along with the battery life displayed at the bottom. Unfortunately, it doesn't look like the software can differentiate between the black or the white variants at this time, and while the battery graphic is nice, I really wish there was a percentage value here. You can easily switch your profiles on the top left and adjust the settings for that profile on the right. Lighting effects adjustments now provide a preview of what effects look like before you commit. You even have the ability to adjust the brightness of the mouse in wireless mode independently from wired. Really nice touch here. What isn't nice though is that for a mouse that advertises 3 zones of RGB lighting, there seems to be no option to control them independently, but what you do get are the usual animations. Moving on, the key binding is quite robust. Pretty much anything that you can bind to a keyboard, you can bind to this mouse. Even the macro feature, which I never use, is implemented very well here. The performance tab is also a breeze to use. Click on the line to add a DPI setting, pull it off to remove it. Lift off, debounce, and pulling rates are neatly organized on the right as well. In the app settings, it's kind of tucked away, but you also have the ability to adjust the timeout before the LEDs are turned off. So overall, a very good experience with the software so far, but unfortunately, this software is not backwards compatible with the existing lineup of wired mice. Now, I'm not sure if the current GMMK keyboards are supported as well, but it's very likely that the recently announced GMMK Pro will be. One of the annoying things that I did discover on this software is that the settings are prioritized over what you set with the onboard hotkeys. For example, if you set your DPI to 400 in the software but have it manually switched to 800 with the mouse, the software doesn't sync the data from the mouse, it overrides it with the current profile saved. Not a big deal breaker or anything, but just something that you should know. So alright, let's get into a quick recap and close this out. Working with this mouse, there is a sense of deja vu. I find myself asking the same question many of us did when the original Model O first came out, and that is, how can Glorious produce something like this and still make a buck? Like the Model O when it was first released, the Model O Wireless will completely shake up the price structure for wireless mice going forward, which in my opinion has been stagnant for some time now due to the lack of competition. What Glorious has managed to produce is a wireless mouse that is either comparable or better in spec compared to competitors like the Logitech G Pro, but at a much more accessible price point, presenting an undeniable value regardless if you're buying a wireless mouse for your first time, upgrading, or moving from a competitor. The Model O Wireless is an easy recommendation because there's nothing quite like it at this price point. Well, that's it for today. Like and subscribe. It really helps me out, and I will see you guys next time. Bye.